There we go. Oh, here we are, folks. Okay, my name is David Mantica, Soft Dev. We got George Churchwell from Mount Tam, and right off the bat, I known George since I was about 26 years old, and you can see I'm an old fart right now. George is young. He just never aged. He's like that Gray picture, the picture of Dorian Gray. He's got it up in his room somewhere. He's never aging. Anyways, we know each other a lot, so he might get me. I might tease him a little bit because he used to abuse me back in the day when he was the smart instructor and I was the little peon facility manager. Hey. All right, George, you just want to say hi to the group?
Hey, how you doing, everybody?
Great. So we're going to talk about AI and complicated and complex projects, but we're going to also just talk about AI real use. And then what we want to do is kind of get you fired up for the conference we have coming up on April 30th. George is going to be there, and George got 3 or 4 presenters from the Mount Tam group as well. So there's so much stuff to dig into. But George, just the first question I have for you is, how did you start playing around in this AI space? What would you initially start working on?
Well, originally we do a lot of work with a large company, Cisco, and they've had AI, but it was always in specific tools. And when around November, but just a little bit more than a year ago, when ChatGPT came out, started playing with that interface, very quickly you could tell this was going to be a game changer. So just started doing things and I'm getting amazed. And it wasn't within a month or so that started to produce things that I was doing manually using the early releases of ChatGPT when it was GPT-3.
So the interesting thing about you, George, is that you've always played with new technology.
Oh,
always,
yeah.
ever since I've known you, right? So how does this differ in the power or the capability than all the other new stuff you played with in the past? Does it have a different feel?
It's along the same feel, when all of these new things came out. I'm old enough to have been there when the internet came into being. Prior to that, it was packet switching, and when the mobile came into being. So I could tell that this was going to be a game changer, primarily because I started to put things into it that I was doing at work myself, and seeing that the output itself could actually be delivered to a client.
That gets kind of scary.
And that was saying, whoa, this is not that hard to actually get it to do that. And it certainly, it hallucinated at times, like people will say, but as it progressed and you could tell right away, this was going to be something.
That's really neat because you've been, like you said, you've been through 2 or 3 trends changes, right? And adjustments. And, this one to me has the same type of feel, even back in my day when the Telecommunications Act of 96 came out and all the money started coming in. It even has a more different feel than that from my perspective because of just the democratization. I mean, back then you had to be really smart and there were certain groups that played and certain groups that didn't play. Here, everybody can play.
Right.
And that's wild, It's like, but then you have to play right. So tell me about the first project, that one project we were talking about when we were in the green room and we were going back and forth. You're telling me about some of the sales enablement stuff you're doing with public and private.
Oh, yeah. So this is a project that actually occurred a little bit later on, but because the GPT interface had to mature. But here's something all of you could take a look at, taking a shot at. Basically, we wanted to have the ability to have sales enablement information to allow a salesperson to know if the customer they were working with had made any public statements about a type of solution that their product would satisfy. And at the same time, we wanted to know if the customer fit the profile and maybe even qualified for a promotion. So now you could say, I'll do that all with one AI. The problem is the outside AI doesn't know what the customer has, and certainly the inside information is all private. And the public side, it has all that information that is outside. So we basically took and put together 2 pieces.
You had the public and the private with a line of demarcation. You had the public and the private with a line of demarcation.
Yeah, and if you do that with technology, it's called Lang chain, but we did it with people. And actually, if you kind of take it to a future name now, you could even call it at some level AI agents, which is
Okay.
like what's happening now. So
Yeah.
basically, we did
Yeah.
this. We searched, and I'll just throw a concept out there just to show. We wanted to see if the companies that we had a list of had an interest in AI because we wanted to sell a server with GPUs. So we searched to see if a public statement was created, and certainly with AI, you would hear that, and who said it, and what did they say, so that AI would search the internet. And by the way, you can either use open searching, or if you kind of want to direct something, I'll throw out a buzzword, you could use something called RAG, which
Yeah.
is retrieval augmented generation, which allows you to give the AI outside URL links and say, search these. But in any case, you create and it's not a one-line prompt. You would create a fairly sophisticated prompt that would search for the things you want to know. Once you get that info and you say, okay, for these customers, I now have this interest identified. Now I would go inside and see, do those companies that were interested in AI actually have the server that I'm
What's
interested
interesting is that
in?
you solved this. You solved one of the main issues of security and privacy there.
Yeah, by keeping them separated.
Yeah,
Yes,
like two
by
separate
keeping them
entities.
separated. And then, do they qualify for a promotion? Now, could this all be done manually? Yeah, it could
Yeah,
be. But
but
yeah, it
how
would
long is that
take,
going to take?
you're taking, once you build the prompt, I'm going to grant you that. You're talking about minutes or so to figure out the outside, and then your minutes on the inside. And now you combine the two together and give that to the salespeople.
So
So,
here's a skinny that we talked about before that just blew my mind. Tell them about the capability of outside versus inside. So the inside was a Microsoft-enabled ChatGTP private environment.
yeah.
The
Now,
outside was OpenAI ChatGTP.
yep. And you
Okay.
would say they're both GPT, so why don't they work the same?
Yeah.
Because of this firewalling that's blocking, the internal private versions don't have the exposure to the outside information, and you don't want them to get that exposure to maintain the security.
But
So you have to go outside to see that type of information. Yeah. And
so you
that's
don't
also, you
the
can't tie them
environments don't get
together.
trained as the environment doesn't get trained as well then.
It doesn't get trained. Right, right. It doesn't get trained. And let me toss something out for you that's ironic about AI that I've learned. This is
Okay.
the ironic thing. People think that the AI is going to solve all their problems because that's what it does. But I'm going to tell you something. The best people now that are going to use AI, and if you think AI is going to take your job away or anything, I will say this. If you're a domain expert in what you do, those are the people that the AI needs, because once you learn about prompt engineering, and probably in the future you won't even need to know about prompt engineering, but you need to know your domain. And when I
You
say
gotta know
domain,
what to put into it. You gotta understand enough to really put in to get the quality out.
yeah, if I was a lawyer, if I was an educator, a project manager, can't just say to the AI, create a contract. You would want to say, create a contract and make sure it has disclaimers, indemnification,
Covers the this is
it
this is
covers
the
all of the elements.
yep.
The state of governing law is Virginia.
And
You
here's
want
the
to,
numbers. You got to put the numbers too. So here's the numbers I want in the contract.
right.
This is the level of non-disclosure I want. So yeah, that's a really good point, George. And that's part of what I think people are starting to see is that, there's like one level that you can go play around with ChatGTP, create a couple articles, write a bedtime story in the voice of, Stephen King or some stupid crap like that. But the real productivity work, there still needs that human level of detail and understanding to make it provide the output you want. Is that what you're saying?
Right,
That's
right.
really
The
good
real
point.
productivity does definitely need that type of approach, and it needs to have the person have that domain expertise to give it the prompts to put in to get that feedback coming out, and also to look at what's coming out. And so that's this irony, because many people might not actually know their job to the level that they can set the prompts in.
That's
And that's what I
scary.
say to all of you. It's kind of odd. If the best thing you can do to be ready for an AI world is really know your job at a highly technical level, so that you can help the AI build for you the thing you need.
Or your area, you're deep in the expertise of the specific area. So if you're a BA, you really understand the CRM system, soup to nuts, capabilities, functionality. So when you want the AI to look at doing custom reporting, you know what to ask it.
Yes,
Or
yes.
or doing predictive analytics about the future related to maybe your internal data you give to it. You can know what it's almost like writing a survey, right? You got to know what you when I'm writing a survey, I want to know my answers. I have an understanding of my answers before I write the survey. So
Exactly.
I know the environment so well that I'm surveying.
Exactly. And to give an even little more of a piece with that, if I asked you to write an email and you're a salesperson and you're writing an email to your client, you could tell ChatGPT to write the email. But if you just told it to write the email, you would be missing the pieces like, did you want to generate what kind of sentiment? Urgency? Did you want FOMO in it? Fear of missing out? Did you want fear, uncertainty, and doubt in it?
Is there a couple of keys that you know about that customer that you want to highlight when the message with the message itself?
But when we write our emails, our minds are just doing that automatically.
Yeah.
You don't even think about it. When you're working with the AI, those sentiments, those elements have to be put in, because otherwise it doesn't know.
And it simulates it too. So it's funny. I was doing a presentation last night, George, about humanity, and I went to GTP and asked it tell me about humanity, and it gave me an answer. Then I started asking it questions like, do you want to be human? Do you want to learn to be human? I asked it, why did it include an exclamation point? Do you understand and it was funny. It was all going back to simulation, make you feel more comfortable for the output. It's like interesting. It really is built to create an output and then simulate what it's been trained. So I've been trained that enthusiasm uses these texts, so I'm going to use it. I don't understand what it is. I've just been trained.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about. Here's the difference between, spewing something out because you have a ton of information and really knowing it and understanding.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And to kind of pivot this to the next level, prompt engineering, any of you heard that? And that's one of the things everybody talks about, because that's been around. But just
But
like
you
this
have to
AI,
do it. No, you do have to do it right now. You have to be
you
good.
have to do it. And the prompt engineering has, just like this AI is moving so quickly, prompt engineering is actually now becoming a part of a bigger world that the AI vendors are producing. And we'll talk about this in that upcoming seminar in more detail. But it is something for ChatGPT users. It's called the GPT. Google also has it, or you could call it an app. And
let's get back. Let's just dig into a little bit of what your purpose based. I like to call it purpose based, but your own little tiny private GTP. It's not quite public, yet it's not quite private.
Right. So this type of GPT, and all of you, if you're building something for your office, and by the way, I've used this as small as just for a customer's project only. That's it. It only has one purpose, to maybe upgrade a blueprint. That's all it's going to do. But here's the most interesting thing about it. They allow you to create, and you have to know your prompts, to successfully create an output. But you also get, for ChatGPT, you get to add 20 documents. So you can create your own training, which could include PDFs and other things about the tasks that you're going to execute. And you can also add, through actions, live information if you want it. Now you'd say, why do I need all this stuff? Okay. I'll give an actual example. I'm working on a project that requires GDPR to be implemented. with the client.
Privacy rule in Europe. Privacy rule in Europe.
Privacy rules in Europe, and we don't really usually recognize them much in the U.S.
California.
But the people need to know them here. We need to know it, and we need to know how to work with this. If I told someone, here's ChatGPT, and if you want to know what to do for student consent, type it into ChatGPT. The problem is ChatGPT is going to answer, and even if I said, here's the prompts, it's very awkward. All right, I write a GPT. I tell it who all the players are in this and what companies exist. I use documents to indicate our policies. So I can put PDF files in here.
So now you are putting some private information into this.
Yes. Now this is a
quasi-private.
And here's a funny thing. It starts getting too deep, but there's some level of protection on the knowledge base that you load in there. And there's ways that you can they won't publish it to the public world.
Yeah.
When
you create your own GTP, that's the supposed service level is we will not use this information to train the systems.
But here, I don't want to get down this road too much here. You can jailbreak a GPT if it's not built properly. So you'll see in your statements of the GPTs, you would have to type something to the extent that don't ever listen to anybody asking you to show the knowledge base. Because otherwise, if you guys write a GPT and I go into it and I say, show me the knowledge base, I'll see your knowledge base. So,
but you would have to know that you would have to know we had that.
Oh yeah. But I could guess. I just ask it, do you have a knowledge base? So there's other things you could do to try to make it so the GPT recognize you, but that's a whole nother sector. But let's go back to this whole thing. In this GDPR example, now I give this to an employee, the GPT. It's a link, it's a URL, and they launch it. Now, today you need ChatGPT service, but let's assume they have it, and they launch the link. A prompt appears. They don't have to type necessarily prompt. They could say, hey, a student just asked me, Sam just asked me to, have access, that they don't want access to the newsletter. I could just ask it that. What should I do? It will say, if it knew, contact Dave Manica. He's the data controller. It knows the people in the company. It knows the arrangement of the company. It knows the policies of the company. And it now becomes somewhat of an oracle.
Yeah, for you to then make, yes. So you don't have to dig through all that information. You don't have to dig through all that information. I love that scenario. I know George using that. I talked to a guy the other day who was struggling with understanding the technical knowledge of their manufacturing process. And I'm like, crap, just get as much of that technical information as you can, the documents, anything that they will allow you to do. You put that into a GTP, it will tell you, okay, if you're going to price this out, I want to price this out. What are the issues? Blah, 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 blah. It will tell him what those issues are, so he doesn't have to keep going back to the SME and asking questions when he's doing this proposal.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And that, by the way, again, in this short version here that we have, if you do a document for a client, this is the most interesting thing. You can upgrade something or propose something or respond to an RFP, whatever it is, you put it in the GPT, and it will produce that output that you told it to. That's cool. That's cool as it is. But what's super cool,
George. Yeah, super cool.
You can now talk to it. And I noticed this a couple months ago when I was doing this. The client asked me, why did you upgrade this one element? Because I gave you all these things I wanted done for the blueprint to be rewritten, and then you upgraded this one element. Why'd you do that? Well, I went to the GPT and I said, why did you do that? And it told me why. And I told the client, I said, this is why. And then he said, well, what if we didn't do that? And I said, remove that. And I said, now it looks like this. So all of a sudden you have a PDF file that talks. Imagine you have a PDF file that's a talking PDF file that can actually communicate in natural language with people who can now say, you know, I don't want to spend $50,000 on this. I want to spend 25,000. What can I remove? Or how can I get a bigger addressable market? Or whatever it is, you now have a highly interactive,
You just have to be very, you have to be very smart about the parameters of that specific GTP.
Yes.
And you can't cross pollinate, or then they're going to get the parameters screwed up. That's why I love the purpose-based concept, because I have a purpose. This is what the GPT is. Now, for the folks here, let's kind of give them more of the understanding of this architecture. So when you create a GTP, you are getting access to all the training, all the vectoring, all the capabilities of the OpenAI system, but you're doing it in a quasi-private way. Correct?
Yes. Exactly.
So what it is, it's kind of a public-private hybrid instead of trying to do your own large language model.
And your recipient doesn't have to use prompts to generate what the purpose was of the GPT.
Okay. So yeah, so you dumbify. So that's the other piece of it. So one is you get the training, which is one of the problems with these internal LLMs right now that I'm concerned about, is that people don't have the skills to properly do the algorithm, vectorize the algorithm, and train the system.
Yep. And people, this gets off on a different subject, but if you look at the past, I think it happened to Samsung. Samsung started using the GPT elements to help fix code, not realizing that code was being published to OpenAI and then out to the
They actually AI did world. That. They must have done that earlier then. You know what's going on now, George, that I'm reading about related to code, is that enterprise companies, especially banks, don't let their developers use the open AI systems, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity, to write code because of the copyright issues. They're afraid that someone's going to claim copyright on a line of code that is put into one of their sophisticated systems, and they have to shut the system down.
You definitely, there are issues, because currently law says that if an AI produced something completely independently, it can't be copyrighted.
That can't be copyrighted. Exactly. And that's
another issue.
Yeah, it is. It's a big issue. So in the education space, you and I are in the education space. It gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because what do? I can create all this wonderful learning content now. But if I'm using a purely public environment, anybody can duplicate it and steal it. It's like China. I can send my stuff to China and forget about it. There'll be 1,000 copies of it instantaneously.
And but for all of you, for all of you out there on the education space, I mean, we can go in different vectors everywhere. But I could say this, in my experience now in that space, and I'll make this broad statement. It's not exact, but content, you can almost treat it as free, no cost.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm not just talking about content that you're creating, content everywhere. There's so much content already in the public LLMs, and content that you wouldn't even think's out there is in there.
It's there.
And as a result, here's the analogy I'll give. I see companies still making content, and they're basically doing the same thing as creating a DVD. And then they have a learning management system, which is a DVD player. Yep. And maybe what they do is allow you to select tracks off different DVDs to kind of make it seem like it's custom.
Yeah, that's a chunkification.
That's what they call personalized. Is I'll select different tracks. But I'm not going to say this is instantly available now, but there are companies who are funded now, consulting for some, that are having no content dev. They just have the knowledge coming into the learning LLMs, just the knowledge.
Yep.
And on the other end, think of it like a coffee machine. You put in beans and water, milk. On the other side, you have buttons: cappuccino, espresso, latte,
black and white, Americano.
Black and white. Yeah. Now those buttons, that's the domain experts that we still need. We need those people to create the buttons that will be the ones that will be used. But here's what will happen at some point as GPUs become more powerful. An individual user will just step up and say, I need training on this.
Yes.
You click it. It'll say, wait 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just like at Starbucks. It makes
just like when you're doing a prompt.
And it makes it, and now you have your training. And that training
you
will
get very
be
specific to, I want videos, or I want this type of e-learning content. Now it's going to take time because of the processors, especially on the video side, and bringing some of those tools together. But yeah, I completely agree with you there on the education space.
Yeah.
The key now is, what is the best way to learn? So this is our debate. No, we're not going to do education space because we can go forever. We got 5 more minutes. So going back to, so what I hear you talk about the environment, you have the full public cloud, right? And
Yes.
right now, Microsoft has their kind of own public cloud. You have OpenAI kind of has their public cloud, and Google's creating their Gemini public cloud. And then Marcel, I think, has one, but there are these public clouds out there. Then you have this idea of within Microsoft, I think, I know, and now OpenAI, of course, is that you can create a mini functional GPT that works specifically for your need related to the data, but has the training capabilities of the mothership.
Yep.
So that means it's kind of a hybrid public-private, and the fact that your content's supposed to be private, but you said you could hack it, right? But you got a comfort level that it's somewhat private. But then the next stage is what we're seeing, especially with NVIDIA's capabilities and something, is these purely private LLM systems.
Well, I think you're always going to have I don't think you're going to have purely one thing in the future.
You're not going to have a purely private, you don't think?
I think you'll have private, and you'll still LangChain to the public to go get different things. And you'll probably use more than one AI source to do things. Depends on what you do for work.
But doesn't that private still have to be trained, though? When you were lane sourcing to get information, you're not getting the training and the algorithm, you're getting the information.
We can get this in come to the event on April 30th, and we'll talk some more about this. But I will tell you that just give you a couple tidbits. There's already servers out there, and you could watch YouTubes on this, where NVIDIA is producing. You basically can take a laptop and you just load the folders in the laptop with the data you want, and it'll auto train on that, as long as that has a NVIDIA card in it, and you use Llama or Mistral, which are open source AI large language models.
Yep.
But here's the other thing. On the public side, even if you do anything that starts to become hybrid, there are cost considerations. You pay for tokens, you pay for GPUs. So that's a whole nother world.
How much was that? Going back to the GPRT thing or whatever, and I'm mixing the European
GDPR.
How much did that cost?
Well, here's the crazy thing. Cost nothing. The GP, well, it costs 20. It costs what the Chat GPT costs to have. So I shouldn't say nothing.
So you weren't getting token limits? You weren't getting token limits? They were not putting.
No, GPTs don't charge for that. Maybe if OpenAI listens on this podcast, they might start charging. But I believe what
all you need to pay is your $20 and you get your GTP without token consideration.
Yes, today that's what it is. I think it's all still in a startup phase. I think they're not making money on that, but that's their business, and we can take advantage of that today. It won't be that way in the future. Probably it'll start charging once we get addicted.
I think there's a lot of people that have now run into the token limits, and I was doing my own research on the energy consumption, and between reading and looking into it, it's like you do 3 pictures using OpenAI ChatGPT 4, it's the same amount of energy as fully charging your iPhone 14.
It could.
Based on the joules and the energy and the CPU component.
But if you do APIs, I do work with APIs. If you're drawing down and you're paying for tokens, you could. It depends on what you're asking. Question was, you could burn $1 a minute.
Oh yeah, it's gonna get expensive. That's what I'm getting
it
at.
can get very expensive.
Even in the private environment, people got to realize and that's why I'm listening to Bloomberg yesterday, and data centers are hot again.
Yes, because
Microsoft bought a nuclear power plant or some crazy stuff like that under the covers.
That's a whole nother world. By the way, we'll talk about that as well, and that's probably something we could start striving towards. Because this hybrid, how do you keep your costs down and get everything done?
Yeah, you want us as you start getting more sophisticated. That's important because the big players know the energy issues and are playing underneath without us knowing it, looking for proper energy sources. Geothermal is a big one that they're looking into. Battery backup. Battery's hot right now. Nuclear is hot right now. And as Antonio said, yeah, you're going to run into a matrix problem, which is who's going to power it.
Yep.
Maybe it's going to be. Maybe it is going to be us.
Nuclear power, maybe.
No, I was saying the human power, like in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll all become batteries to power these huge processors. George, any last thing you want to say?
No, that's it. We will definitely come to the April 30th event. We'd love to see you there.
Absolutely, and you'll hear George in all his glory, and you're just stuck with me as a moderator with my limited pool of information and my ability to babble. George, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Great learning experience. Thank you all. Don't hesitate to send us some questions or check out that website page. And for that, we end our stream.
All right.